Hey everyone, it's Nicole Harvick, and welcome to the Change Book International podcast. We have a big treat this week because we have two authors, and this one you get to meet today on Friday is super special, and she's really amazing. I've met her, I've talked to her, and we're going to interview her, and I think you are going to be fascinated by Stephanie Brandolini. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thank you for having me today. Happy Friday, everyone. It's Friday when we're recording this, so whatever day you happen to be watching this, or sending you the happy Friday vibes.
Exactly. And tell us really quickly why you chose the Change Book to write in.
Yeah, well, honestly, it was a very I'm a very spiritual person, and I do believe in like divine puzzle pieces arranging and stuff. I honestly I didn't even know about the change until I was like scouted, headhunted. I don't know. I just all of a sudden there was a message in my inbox from one of the marketing directors, and I could just tell right off the bat that it was something I wanted to be involved in by the way he was telling me about it. And we got on the phone and had a chat, and it was just one of those things where, I mean, of course, I did my whole thing of like I go to the woods and ask God and like meditate. It's like, should I do this? And it was just a yes. And yeah, I mean, we're always changing, so I figure why not change for the better. And self-empowerment is something that I really truly believe in and advocate for. So it was just a no-brainer, really.
And that's how I felt too. I can remember talking to Jim Lutz and thinking to myself, I have to do this. I have to do this. And the fact that it's, we're all helping each other. We're helping other people. And I love that part of it. But I do know that you are a best-selling author and you have the Womanhood book.
Yeah, that was my first international bestseller. That feels like 10 years ago already. It was only at the end of 2023 when that came out. Yeah, that was the first book that I ever had published. It was a co-author book as well. I got to write that with 13 other inspiring women, and it was led like the leader of the book was a woman that I really know really well and made great friends with. And that was my first like introduction to getting published, and like getting that to be an international bestseller was awesome. And it was just kind of like started the momentum of like, okay, this is what publishing is. Let's keep going with this. And yeah, I actually had my own solo book, my first novel, published the end of last year. So I guess kind of like a year apart. I did the Womanhood book, and then I did my own novel, Bridging the Digital Divide, in October of 2024. So.
Wow. Now tell us what the other book is. You said Bridging the Digital, is that the digital world?
Bridging the Digital Divide. So yeah, that's a science fantasy spirituality novel, fiction for sure. Fiction, like I love writing self-development books. I love writing about empowerment, but the thing I love the most is writing fiction, like putting all this kind of stuff into a story that's about, usually for me, it's like a character overcoming adversity in fantastical scenario, but like within and without. I like to write kind of from a psychological, spiritual lens of what's going on within the person, and manifesting out in the world that they get to vanquish the demons, find their inner power, that kind of thing. That's usually like kind of the general through line of all my work, but in different ways, of course. And I like to draw on, my own inspiration, what's happened to me in my life, and also, what's going on in the world. Like Bridging the Digital Divide was very much inspired by the writer's strike in Hollywood and the rise of AI when it comes to, creativity. Like, is AI going to take over jobs, this and that, like kind of answering those questions in a story form.
Oh, that's interesting.
Or not answering, I would say exploring. Because honestly, the best kind of stories leave more questions than answers.
Yeah. And the only thing, I've written a few, but it's always been about me. So of course I'm very familiar with it. Where does an idea like that come from?
That's a good question. Honestly, it's like a mix of things. Like I have what I always like to say, I have an infinite imagination, and like I can kind of create a story out of like anything. Like literally I was in a group meeting talking about mutual relationships, and I had a story idea from that,
Oh, wow.
But like, yeah, I think of it as like spinning a story, like something, like say something happens, like the whole AI and the writer strikes in Hollywood, that actually did affect me personally, because I was working in the film industry, and there was a lot of layoffs and stuff going on in that industry, and it affected me personally. So whenever something kind of is something that I feel you know, drawn to or affected by, or, you know, something that like sticks with you, then I'm like, okay, I want to explore, I want to unspool this feeling, this idea, this situation, you know, and it just kind of goes from there. Like I've been a lifelong reader and you know, watcher of movies and lover of movies and stuff all my life. So writing a story, it's not easy by any means. Don't get me wrong. I've been studying storytelling for a long time, but eventually it just kind of clicked. You know, I started writing screenplays. That was kind of how I got into writing in the story form. And then I'm kind of glad I did that first because I can write a lot. And when you're writing a screenplay or a script, you do have to be economical with your words. So that's helped me now write novels and write books, because it's like, you know, just saying more with less and being kind of, I don't know, I kind of like to be artful with how the words are on the page, because it adds an effect. Even if you don't notice it, there's like an effect to reading the words if they're like, you know, say one line after the other rather than all together. You know, it might seem like a small thing, but I like to show that like that. So yeah, it's kind of a long-winded answer, but but I do believe too that it's not just me writing. It's like I believe it's God, source, universe, higher power. Like for me, it's God, like writing through me and with me. And, you know, those moments of like divine inspiration, it's not always flow, by the way, guys. There's times when you stop and start, you're like, does this even work anymore? But those moments of flow, of like, that's like, it's like time doesn't even exist anymore. And I'm writing and feel that flow of creativity and divinity all kind of working together. It's, there's nothing else like it, really.
And so do you consider those downloads that you're getting from another source? And you mentioned going into the forest. When you connect with nature, is that helpful?
Definitely. Yeah. I was out in nature earlier because I needed to ground. There's a lot going on in my life right now. And I'm like, okay, I need to just ground in the earth, get some guidance and like keep going. But yeah, definitely nature. I'm lucky enough. I live in Vancouver, Canada, and I live right by this amazing park, and the beach is right here. And yeah, I'm very blessed. I'm very, very lucky. And yeah, like I can just like go ride my bike or just go walk down the street, and like the nature is right there. So
oh, I love that. I love that.
It's a sacred space for me.
Good, good. And I do see that you're an award-winning screenwriter as well, which plays into all these books. And how did you become a screenwriter? How did that come together?
Well, honestly, that's been my dream, like ever since I was a kid, like watching movies. I was like, who's the one that's writing these stories? I was always wondering, you know, and I would look at the credits. I would like totally like, this is before like, you know, I mean, I was born in 86. So like, you know, I was kind of like a 90s kid, but like the internet was kind of starting to become a thing. So it's not like you looked up on IMDb. I would like literally watch the credits, like who wrote this, you know? And I was always just fascinated with how it all comes together, because I would see all these names. I'm like, all these people it took to create a movie, and now being in that industry, or have been being in it, like kind of in and around it, I'm like, yeah, it takes a village for a reason. But there's something about, I mean, I love reading too. Reading is a different medium, but bringing it to life, it kind of, you get to experience it in a whole nother level, you know, whatever the story is, you know, like especially when you go to the theater, you get really like immersed in whatever the story is. And it's like, it affects you on like on a level that's more, and I don't know, for me, when I read it, I get really into it too. But I think for a lot of people, they don't have the patience to read, especially nowadays. So, you know, movies and TV and stuff, when told well, of course, I think they have this power to change and transform people. You know, you watch a movie and you're not the same after, you know?
Yeah. It's just like words are so powerful, the way they're used, the way they're put together. And, you know, you can read a book and sometimes be brought to tears by those words. Yeah. So I just find it to be, I've always been just a voracious reader. I love any kind of reading. I think that's probably why I like to write as well. But what did your screenplay that you wrote, or the movie, what was that about?
Well, I've written a couple actually, but the one that's won the most awards, it was actually my first one. It's called Transcendent Shadows. And oh my God.
Oh, I love that name. I love it.
It feels like, honestly, like a lifetime ago that I wrote that, but yeah, that was my first one, so it's super special to me. And it's about this. Oh my god, let me see if I can remember the log line for it. It's about this headstrong warrioress living in this realm of light and darkness, and she fights on the side of the light against this like shadow realm. And she has a secret, though. She has a shadow self within her that she has had to keep hidden from her world, because it's kind of like, people view having a shadow side as like being infected or something like that. And, she's had to hide it. And I wanted to show what it feels like to suppress a part of you you don't feel will be accepted. And on her journey is all about like embracing the darkness within and showing her world how to come together as a society, with the light and the darkness, dancing together rather than at war with each other.
That sounds absolutely fascinating, because we all have a shadow self. I
Yeah.
mean, that we tuck down, or, we're too afraid to explore. So now, was that made into a book as well, or was that just a screenplay?
No, that's a screenplay. But maybe I should write it into a book, and then it'll become a movie kind of thing. Because I mean, I love screenwriting, and I'm very grateful that I was winning awards and everything. But getting something made in the film world is a whole other ballgame than just having it written. It's like, so that's why, like, I don't know, when the opportunity to write books came along, I was like, well, let's actually make something rather than just having it be a script sitting there, But yeah, now you sparked that idea. Maybe I will turn it into a book.
I mean, shoot, you just, that could be a cartoon for girls. It could be, a book, all kinds of things you could do with that kind of plot. That sounds fascinating. And, one of the things you talk about too, because I read your bio, you're a coach. Correct. You're as a writer and a screenwriter, and you're a coach, but you talk about helping people break free from the matrix. So I want to talk about that, because that kind of thing, I love that kind of thing. And describe to our audience what you see the matrix as.
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, the movie, but it's also like sort of the prison we make for ourselves when it comes to like thinking everything has to be one way, like, and this is no one's fault. Like, we're kind of brought up thinking, you need to go to school, get good grades, get out and get a job, retire at your 65. That's kind of the matrix that I want to show people that you can break out of. And that involves, building wealth, income streams, like outside of like the norm. Because truly, like, I mean, as an entrepreneur, anyone watching that's an entrepreneur, trading time for money is just, you're never going to get ahead that way. Like, it's just, it's a trap. It's a trap. I'm going to use a Star Wars quote right there. And it's hard to break free, because even me, like, sometimes I'm like, because it's scary to not have that, like, quote unquote guaranteed income coming in from a job, but also that's the gilded cage that we get stuck in, thinking that is security when it's actually not. And going back to what I was saying about the writer's strike and everything, I actually got laid off of my job that I thought was so secure.
Oh, wow.
And it was scary, but I'm grateful for it, because it showed me, there's no such thing as job security. If you really want to build your wealth, you really want to build that dream life, you don't have to do it yourself, but you get to make it happen in other ways. And there's a lot of ways out there to, have multiple income streams, have like, build an income doing stuff you love, not because you have to go to work kind of thing.
I know. And just having a job is so different than doing something, from doing something that you love. Can you imagine having to go sit in an office every day when you want to be writing award-winning screenplays? I mean, that's, and I think that is part of the matrix. And we are conditioned from the time we start school to raise our hands to go to the bathroom. And, I mean, it's horrifying. So I love to see that you're helping women break away from that. And you talk about building a legacy as well. What do you see as a legacy for others? What would you have them build for themselves?
Yeah, well, legacy is like, and everyone hears, this is another thing with words that's so amazing and powerful. Like, you hear the word legacy or whatever word, it means something slightly different to everybody, right? And to me, it's like, of course, it's what you leave behind in the hearts and minds of others. Yes, there's a money aspect to it, but there's more to it than that. There's like, you know, your way of being, you know, like a lot of people say that, like, you know, like I inspire them. So like leaving inspiration behind, leaving, you know, what that thing that brings you joy. Like if you create something out of that, leaving that behind, and just kind of leaving the world a better place than it would have been without you there, kind of thing. Just being a positive instead of being a plus instead of a minus, kind of thing. It
And
can
I
be that
love
simple,
that.
but legacy can sound like a big, huge thing of like, I got to leave this inheritance, I got to leave this. It's like, it doesn't have to be that. It can be just not just anything, but just like the way that you are, and the way you leave others like feeling after they've encountered or experienced you, you know?
Ooh, good point. Good point. You know, my daughter asked me once, she said something about, what if there was one thing you wanted me to remember about you, what would it be? And I said that I would drop everything to go on an adventure.
Oh,
That's
I
what
love that.
I,
Yeah.
I will drop anything to go on an adventure. And that can be just, you know, back in Arizona, that was a trip to Sedona. That was an adventure. But I told her, I said, you know, in this day and age, I said, you can always make money. You know, you can do Uber, you can do all kinds of things to get money, you know, pretty quickly. I said, but you can't always make a memory. And
Mm.
that's what I would like my legacy to be, something about, you know, she dropped everything to take an adventure, and I will do that to this day. So I love that you pointed out it doesn't have to be having $1 million to disperse to your family or your kids. It can be something as simple as how you made people feel.
Yeah, and like I'm being a writer, I love alliteration. So like, yeah, money, but also morals and memories. Like those are like, and mindset. You can leave a mindset behind too, you know, because you know, sometimes just talking to someone, like I like to surround myself with like, you know, people like yourself and like thought leaders and people that are, you know, maybe at a higher level than me, so I can aspire to that, you know. And like a mindset is very powerful, because your mind is gonna, like you know, I believe that it's body, mind, spirit, but the mind does rule a lot of everything. Like when you get your mind in alignment with really what you're here for, your destiny, your desires, that's like really powerful. And like hearing, experiencing other people that are maybe at a level that you'd like, you're like aspiring to be, you can like pick up that the kind of mindset that has gotten them there and can take you there and take you, you know, and you can kind of make it your own, you know. Like I don't know, like I honestly, like I know I talk all positivity and go for your dreams and stuff, but there was a time when I was really stuck in negativity and depression
Oh,
and thinking that, like, you know, what am I even here for, kind of thing.
ooh,
But
that's
I
scary.
mean, yeah, but like, I mean, a lot of creative people, writers, and honestly, entrepreneurs, a lot of them, most of them actually, something like that has happened and they've overcoming. That's kind of what I want to leave behind. Like, you can overcome. In fact, you're here to overcome your whatever your cross is to bear, you know, that's what you're here for, is to overcome, and then, you know, show other people how they can overcome too.
I love that. It's kind of like a ripple that
Yeah,
goes,
a butterfly ripple effect.
yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I learned to reframe things, you know, instead of even my divorce. And I look back on it, and it was tough, I have to tell you. But what I did is I learned to reframe the fact that it happened for me, not to me,
Oh yeah.
because I learned so much. And you know, I wouldn't be able to help people effectively if I hadn't gone through that myself. Even though I look back, it's like I would never want to do it again,
Yeah.
but I reframed it to where I didn't have to have negativity or trauma about it.
Yeah, definitely. Like those simple word shifts, see the power of words, right? So it didn't happen to you, it happened for you. And you don't have to do it, you get to do it. You know, like I totally know what you mean. Like, I mean, another big thing around, as well as like wealth and creativity, for me is health. And a big reason why health is important to me is because I overcame, you know, my own struggles with health, whether like I had a really bad eating disorder for like,
Oh
I was
goodness.
stuck in that for many years, and I've been recovered for like 10 years, guys, by the way, so I'm not in it anymore. But, you know, just knowing that, you know, without your health, there's no point in anything else, really. I mean, and there's no point in
Absolutely.
having millions of dollars or, you know, whatever your dream life. It can't stand on, like, if you don't have like the health to enjoy it with, right? So yeah, just and be able to help others that were maybe in a are or have been and where I've been, because especially eating disorders, like it's a very particular thing that's very hard to understand unless you've been there.
Mhm.
And you know, it's funny, every time I start talking about that, I always want to say, like, I'm not like an eating disorder therapist or anything like that, but it's like I'm just getting the hit as I'm saying that. It's like maybe I should be a little bit.
Well, and you know, you must, and compassion is so important, because a lot of people just want to say, oh, we'll just sit down and eat, but they can't.
Yeah.
They can't. And so someone like you, who has actually been through it and is brave enough to talk about it, would be
Mhm.
the perfect type of person to, you know, if nothing else, be able to speak out about it, or, you know, counsel or whatever. But there has to be a lot of empathy in
Mhm.
that situation. We just can't shun it and say, well, you know, look at you, you didn't want to eat. But it's a mental disorder as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and like, you know, speaking about spirituality and like, you know, God and stuff, if you know, that is, it's definitely not God. I'm not going to say the name, but it's not God that is. And I feel like that kind of like dark force kind of energy, like it really, like it had a hold of me, like seriously for 15 years. Like,
Wow.
and it's like, you know, like you said about your divorce, it's like I wouldn't want to go through that again, but it can't be any other way, because like, you know, all the stuff I've written, it wouldn't be the same. Like all the things that I'm creating now, like come from that place of like overcoming and like facing death and facing like, you know, the worst, the darkest parts of facing my own shadows allows me to write about
Yes.
shadows now, you know?
Right, right. What was your epiphany that helped you open your eyes to, I need to heal. I need to stop this. What transpired that just like was a light bulb moment for you?
Sorry, someone's gonna call me. Why does this have to happen? Sorry, 1 second. Decline. Decline call. Okay. Sorry
That's
about
okay.
that. Yeah. Well, you know what? This is kind of an ironic thing to say, because part of having an eating disorder is it's very isolating. And I was always like, you know, I was like me and my eating disorder against the world. Like it became like literally like an entity. It was like a weird little like frenemy in my own mind. But what turned me around was wanting to be in relationship with other people. I literally,
Oh,
I was like kind of going on dates with a guy who like became like my first serious boyfriend. And I remember thinking, it's like, I don't want to be weird when I go out for dinner with him. Like that was just a simple, it wasn't just that thought, but it was like, you know, a thing that it led up to that of like, you know, it's like, I don't want to be weird about food anymore. You know, I want to enjoy
yeah.
the food. I want to be like, because you know, food is a social thing, and I'm part Italian, so it's like, you know,
Eating bread and pasta and butter
you
and
know, and now I'm all about that. I want to sit down and have all the food, but it's like, yeah, it was just, it's interesting to think back to that, because I remember it was so out here in Canada, we have a restaurant called the Cactus Club. I remember we went to this Cactus Club and I was like, okay, I'm not going to be weird about food. But but it had been a long time coming to that. It wasn't like I was just like, oh, I don't want to be weird about food. Let's go. It like, you know, and it took trusting someone, because like I told him, you know, I told him about this kind of stuff.
and that's big, because when we do have eating disorders, we don't want to disclose it, do we?
No, yeah, because it's like I was in a lot of shame about that for a long time, because I don't know, it shouldn't be though. I mean, well, maybe when you're stuck in it, it feels like it is, but when you've overcome it, it's like, I mean, I'm very vocal about it now, because like I don't want to say I'm proud, because like, pride is not the right word, but it's like it's my testimony that I've overcame it, and I didn't overcome it alone. Like God was with me, even when I didn't even realize it was God, you know. But yeah, and it's interesting because like when I let go of the food part of it, I realized it was a lot more. It wasn't about the food, you know, it was about like fear and about, I don't know, a lot of stuff around perfection, around thinking I needed to be a certain way and look a certain way and all this stuff. And just like really I remember I said this to a friend. It's like, I let go of this anorexia armor. I remember I called it that. And it was like, and then it's like the real me kind of started coming out more, which is, you know, I mean, it took a while. Like this is like probably like 7 years after I decided I wanted to get better. It's like, you know, then it really happens. But
Wow.
yeah, it's just a gradual thing that was sparked by wanting to connect, which, like I
Good.
said, was ironic because I used to be so hyper introverted and like, you know, I sort of had like I don't know, I guess an aversion to people and being in relationships because I was in a toxic relationship with the eating disorder, to be honest. Like,
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And when you look back at that girl that had those issues and you look at yourself today, is there self-love for you now where there might not have been for that girl who had the eating disorder?
Yeah, like that's where it all comes from too, like the embracing those parts of myself. And you know what? Some like I kind of think of it as like facets of yourself, like when you're, like healing is not like a one and done thing. It's not like boom, I'm healed, let's go,
I wish.
It's like, and it's like most of it is, but then it's like it's kind of like, when you like are cleaning up and you like open a drawer and there's dust in there and the dust kind of comes out. It's like that kind of, and like these kind of sort of parts of myself that maybe are still from that time a little bit come up, and I'm like, oh, I just accept them, and I have this whole like accepting, embracing, and then like ascending together kind of thing. I actually
Ooh.
like in my novel, I actually write what that feels like, and it is an experience of like going back in. My character literally goes back in her mind to like times when she was traumatized and like heals these past parts of herself. That's like the best way I can kind of explain it, is the only way to heal those parts is with self-love and also love of God. Like, God loves you, so who are you to say otherwise, right?
That's so true. And as much as I've healed, and I've been doing it for 10, 12 years, I've just realized that it's just an ongoing thing, because throughout life there are things that we don't even know or remember that sometimes will bubble up, and you're like, oh my gosh, where did that come from? And you love yourself enough, and you recognize it after a while.
Yeah.
You recognize it, and it's just like, well, I'm going to take care of that. I don't want to live with that certain aspect of me anymore. So I'm going to release it, and I'm going to let it go, but I'm going to do it with love, because I love myself now. And I never even knew that really could be a thing. But
Yeah.
I think on our travels, when we do have things like that, or we do go through trauma, we start, after a while, after, utilizing forgiveness, we start realizing how worthy we are of self-love. And that kind of changes our whole paradigm. It's really interesting. I know it did for me. So
Yeah, definitely. Well, self-worth is like I did this actually. Speaking of the change, doing the change book led me to doing my first speaking engagement with
yay.
one of the gyms with Jim Lutz at his awesome deep dive event. And I just brought that to mind because talking about accepting yourself, forgiving yourself. And like I said this in my talk, is like unworthiness is like the real pandemic. Because like, so many people don't feel like and they don't know it, but that was like honestly where a lot of my I guess disordered stuff was operating from feeling not good enough. And where
Wow.
does that even come from? I don't know. It's kind of weird when you actually look at it. It's like, who told you that?
Right.
Who actually said that to you? And it's like, no one actually, well, so, maybe bullying, maybe a thing, this and that, little things that happen. But honestly, it's like our negative bias as humans is to like latch on to like the one negative thing one person said one time 10 years ago versus all the amazing things you get. But it's like, that's just a weird protection thing that our minds have of like going to the negative. And like, then I think I talk about it like a spiral. Like you can spiral into the positive, but it's so much easier to spiral into the negative.
It is.
It's like, it's kind of like
no, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And we have to have an awareness about us now. When we've gone through it, we kind of know what to look for. And then we know to immediately fix it. Don't wait a year. Don't wait, let's go do our mirror work right now and get rid of this. So
because that's going to collect not just dust, but that's going to stagnate, and fungus will grow, and you'll be opening that drawer and it'll be full of stuff you don't want to see
in there. And
yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Stephanie, we're at the end of our time, but this has been an amazing conversation. I knew it would be, because I've spoke with you before, and I think you're absolutely amazing. And before we go, just give our audience just some type of nugget to take with them about self-love and self-esteem.
Ooh, that's a good one. I love ending off on something like that. This is actually something that I talked to someone earlier about this. It's like, focus on what brings you joy.
Ooh.
Because like I was saying with the, the negative bias we have, it's so easy to like latch on to what's negative or what you think is wrong with you. But when you focus on what brings you joy, you'll find like your superpower within that. Because if it brings you joy, it's going to radiate joy out into the world. And talking about ripple effects, like that's the best butterfly ripple effect ever, is to radiate out joy. And then that can trigger more joy in others. Instead of triggering negative stuff, let's trigger positive stuff like joy, because it is infectious. Like,
It is.
negative things can be infectious. We can make, positive things infectious. Like, I don't like to label, but we kind of have to as humans. But, things like joy and love and happiness, like, those can be the things that we send out into the world. And when you send it out, you get it back like 10 million fold, especially when it's of the fruits of the spirit, as they're called. Joy is one of them, right? So.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I have loved talking to you. And for the audience out there, anyone who's watching, I have got Stephanie's info in her description, and you can click on it and you can go right to her website. You can connect with her, and I would highly suggest you do. She's amazing. So Stephanie, thank you for being here today. Happy Friday to everybody. And you have been an absolute joy.
Yeah, thank you. So have you. Thanks, everyone. Have an awesome rest of your day.
Yeah. Take care, everyone.